Good morning, you listen to FloorDaily.net, and I'm Kemp Harr. This morning my guest is John Turner, the president of Daltile. JT, how you doing?
Hey, Kemp, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and good morning.
Yeah, it's good to talk to you. People who want to go back and look at some history on you, we did a focus on leadership with you in Floor Focus magazine in the June 2013 issue. Interesting to read some of that. You actually started with Daltile working in the summer when you were 15 years old, didn't you?
That's right.
And you took over the presidency, about 6-7 years ago?
2012.
2012. It's no surprise to anybody who knows this business that Daltile in the U.S. has a market share. It's our estimate that it's about 45%, so you're a giant in this business. I saw you briefly at Total Solutions, and I wanted to touch base with how consumption was going in the market and some new things going on with Daltile. So let's start first with consumption. It appears to us that the tile market has softened just a little bit, and from a dollar perspective is only growing around 2%. Is that your read?
That's right. I think that units will end up being around flat, and consumption in dollars will be up a couple of points. You know, there's a lot of noise at the moment into the fourth quarter with the tariffs out of China. We saw the October imports come in with China actually down a little bit year over year. I can't get a good read yet as to whether or not people have moved out of China aggressively and quickly. I think they will over time. We thought we'd see a little spike through the fourth quarter because of the original threat of the additional 15% going in on January 1st, which of course has now been moved back to March 1st.
So what do you think the causes are for this decline in consumer consumption with tile in the U.S.?
Well, I think there's two normal market conditions, which is softening of the production builder residential business slightly year over year, and I think most people came into the year thinking we'd see 6-7% housing starts, and I think we're probably down in that 3% range, 2.5-3% range this year, and next year's forecast isn't to really improve dramatically over that kind of a number. So that was one. I think commercial consumption is flat to slightly down, maybe just a tiny bit. And then the big drag is the continuing evolution of luxury vinyl in the residential remodel space primarily, but it's creeping into builder and it's creeping into commercial as well. So I think that it's had another real strong year, and I think it's impacted all flooring surfaces, with ceramic being probably the most resilient to the change, but still on that residential remodel side, consumption probably down a point or two. It's offset by a little bit of growth in builder, a little bit of growth in commercial.
All right, so losing share a little bit to LVT. I also talked to Sven Hoffman at Total Solutions, and he was telling me that there continues to be a little bit of an issue around available trained labor, and that's a little bit of a factor as well, isn't it?
Well, there's no question, and what that's done is driven up the cost of the installed labor as well. So other surfaces, other products are finding their way into projects where traditionally you'd see ceramic, but the cost of getting the ceramic installed is significantly higher. That's a real impact on the residential remodel side and also on the commercial side. In the residential remodel side, we're seeing some of our great dealer customers have to quote 4- and 6-week lead times for installation, where with whether it's carpet or vinyl or some of the other surfaces, they can quote 3 to 5 day type installation. And I think that makes the retail sales associate uncomfortable to be quoting 4- and 6-week lead times, not to mention then the cost difference when they do finally quote the ceramic versus a vinyl or a carpet install. So I think it's just easier right now for dealers in general to install some of the other surfaces versus ceramic.
All right, another thing I'd like to talk about is the strength of the dollar and how that's impacting the business, because when you've got a strong dollar, you get a little bit less sales from domestic manufacturing and you get more imports. Fortunately for you, because you have plants all over the world, it may not be as big of an impact, but that's certainly a factor, isn't it?
Well, for sure, and on top of a strong dollar this year, you've seen some other global things happen that are a little different, right? You've seen the Turkish lira absolutely collapse, and Turkey's a quality country for ceramic manufacturing, solid porcelain floor manufacturing in Turkey for sure. You see the Chinese domestic market softening dramatically, which frees up quite a bit of capacity to go elsewhere, and you've seen overcapacity in international freight. So you haven't seen any inflation whatsoever in the international freight, and you've seen relatively tame fuel. Fuel went up middle of the year domestically here as oil went up slightly, but you didn't see any significant change to fuel oil, which is used by steamship lines. So the whole logistics and supply chain internationally stayed relatively flat with little to no inflation, and that stronger U.S. dollar really did make it easy for importers to bring product in here really competitive price. And you can see it in all the landed cost numbers.
Right.
You know, if you looked at every individual country over the last several years, you're seeing imports drop from 5% in China, let's say, down to 20 or 25% less expensive right now out of Turkey. So absolutely, that's a real trend that's hurting domestic producers. But to your point, we move production around, and we've got production all over the world, so it's not quite as big an issue for us. But certainly we are the largest domestic producer by a significant factor, so still an issue.
A minute ago you mentioned the Chinese tariffs. Tell us what you think the impact of those tariffs are going to be on the business.
I think that the basic ceramic tile, glazed porcelains, color body glazed products, those types of products will be moved to other parts of the world if the tariff lasts for any length of time. I think the Spanish are sitting with available capacity and very aggressive right now. The Turkish, as I mentioned, certainly in Brazil, there's some capability there. And the dollar real situation, which you mentioned before, is encouraging the Brazilians for sure. So I think that type of product will move out of China. I still think it's difficult to find other sources for double-loaded basic technical products other than China. And for sure, if you talk about stone mosaics, glass mosaics, or polished-type products, those things are going to stay in China. There's just really not a place to go get them, even with a 10% tariff. Now, you know, at 25%, any number of different things could happen. You could see a significant change from glass mosaics to, let's say, glazed manufactured mosaics or cut mosaics, which is not going to happen with a 10% tariff. But with a 25% tariff, you might start seeing things like that happen as well. But I just think it's the basic ceramic, which is the bulk of what is coming out of China, which is your glazed porcelain type products, some glazed ceramic products. They're going to move to other countries that are almost as competitive now as China.
And as we look at the channel in the U.S., it's probably going to have more impact on the home centers and the floor and decors of the world than it will on the independent flooring dealer, wouldn't you say?
I do think so, although I think that there's a lot of independents have become reliant on imports for the base grade offering, and I think that that's going to be impacted. But for sure, the major consumers who have the direct supply chains are the home centers.
All right, one last question. As I go up I-75 and I see the big Mohawk building that shows all the products they're in, they've added one. It's countertops, and that's in your bailiwick. That's something you're doing. Tell us real quick about what's going on with countertops.
Well, we're certainly excited about that. Several years ago, we kind of acquired our way into stone slab distribution, and we've since, in the last couple of years, we've really turned that into its own business and focused on it and put a lot of energy behind it. And we now have 45 distribution locations around the U.S. We've called it our countertop business. We just completed this quarter, an $80 million quartz manufacturing facility in Tennessee. So we're excited about backward integrating into manufacturing of countertop materials. In Europe, we invested in the gauged porcelain business, which we think is going to be a countertop product at some point in time here in the U.S., as well as a wall and floor tile product. So we've got a dedicated sales force out there. We've got dedicated distribution out there. And, of course, we're leveraging the commercial and residential sales force and some of our other channels to try to push it ahead even further.
At the Stone Peak ribbon cutting that I went to not long ago, they were saying they were the first in the big gauge panels, but you're not far behind, are you?
The first in manufacturing in the U.S. is definitely Stone Peak, but Crossville's been in the laminum business now for many years, importing that, and we were producing both our Emile group, recently acquired by Marazzi, and Marazzi are both in the manufacturing of gauged porcelain, and so we use our sister manufacturing in Italy today to have a broad selection of both 6mm and 12mm jumbo slabs. So we feel like from a design perspective, we're ahead of the market, and certainly from a flexibility perspective with the types of volumes we're doing around the world with a base of manufacturing in Italy, we think we're in pretty good shape from a service perspective as well. So very excited about it. If we build a big enough business over here in North America, we'll certainly backward integrate into that manufacturing as well.
Well, it's incremental and diversification, so it's a good strategy, isn't it?
We got to find continued ways to grow. As you mentioned, we're the share leader on the ceramic side, and so we've got some opportunity over in countertop, and we've got a few other irons in the fire that we'll continue to work on back in the lab and always look to grow.
All right. JT, it's great to talk to you again. Been talking to John Turner, the president of Daltile, and you've been listening to Kemp Harr and FloorDaily.net.